said the other day, you can't really watch the market. It's just a number. Yeah, just a number that indicates the amount of how much less money you had than last week. But here's the big headline in this. Americans, just regular everyday Americans, including a lot of people who voted for this administration, are now starting to lose their faith in this administration. I talked to a guy the other day. He used to be out there singing YMCA, and now he's living there. All right, well, we got a great show. We got Sam Stein and Batya Ungar Sargon on first up. He is the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania. That's all we need to say. Josh Shapiro is here. Look, I'm going to get right to it. But all right. I mean, things are rough. We don't have time to fuck around.
Okay. Let's do it.
We really don't.
I'm ready.
So, my first question, and I'm not going to ask you if you're going to run for president.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you this, and before I do, I'm going to preface it by saying I think one of the mistakes Democrats make is that they're too modest. If one thing Trump has taught us is that Americans don't hate a braggart. I think a lot of people who criticize the left, who want them to do better, think they don't brag upon themselves or their accomplishments as much as they should. So here's my question, not if you're running. My question is, so many people now put you on that short list. Why do so many people see you as this guy who might be the guy?
You know, Bill, I've run for statewide office in Pennsylvania 3 times. I've won each of those times. And each time I ran, I set a record for either getting the most votes or winning by the most. I won when Hillary Clinton lost. I outperformed Joe Biden, got more votes than anybody ever running for governor in Pennsylvania.
Well, that's a good start. How about I got the greatest votes ever?
You asked the question. Pennsylvania is the ultimate swing state. I govern a state with a divided legislature. For the last 2 years, I was the only governor in the entire country with a divided legislature. Yet we found ways to fix our unconstitutional education system, bring $3.7 billion in private sector investment into Pennsylvania, cut taxes 6 times, speed up government. Took 8 weeks to get a business license. Today I was sworn in as governor. Now it takes just 3 days. And we hired 1,500 new cops on the streets, and crime is down 36%. So we're delivering results in the ultimate swing state in the nation.
Okay, so that's that wing of the party. Then there's this other wing, and we saw the fight between the two today because the government was going to shut down because the Democrats are very mad at Trump shutting down the government, so now they're going to shut it down. It's very confusing. But the Republicans proposed a budget, and Chuck Schumer said he would vote for it, and then did, and got 10 Democratic senators to vote with him. The other side of the party is furious at this. AOC pretty much called him a traitor. Where do you stand on this? Did Schumer do the right thing, or is the other part of the party right? Because that is the divide in the party.
I mean, here's the thing. I'm not an expert in the DC stuff. I try and stay as far away from that as I can. I live in the real world in Pennsylvania where we have to balance budgets. We got to bring Republicans.
Well, that's going to be part of the job of president
to get stuff done. But here's what I will tell you. I think it is a false choice to suggest you need either or. Either you need that resistance, that fight, that opposition, or you need to find ways to compromise and come together. I think that's a false choice.
But this was a specific
I think
vote.
You can try to do both.
Well, you can't vote both ways. You either vote yay or nay.
I would have liked to see when Chuck Schumer had leverage here to say we need A, B, C, and D for the Democratic Party, and force the Republicans to meet him halfway on those issues and deliver something for the folks who are worried now. You know, Bill, I gotta tell you.
How can you force Republicans to do anything?
Because they needed 8 Democratic votes in the United States Senate. And I'll tell you what, this weekend I was at Dick's Sporting Goods, a great Western Pennsylvania-based company. Buy my kid. Thank you, yeah. They should be advertisers.
A lot of people in our crowd say that every week.
I'm buying cleats for my kids for baseball season. And one after another, the other moms and dads who were there doing the same thing came over to me and said, I'm worried. What are folks doing? What's happening? I feel that worry. I channel their worry, their anxiety into my work. I hope folks in DC are listening to these people that I heard at the store that I see every day. They're worried. They want to see action. There was an opportunity for more action here. I wish more was able to get done on the issues that matter most. But don't let anybody tell you have to be a party of resistance or you have to be a party of getting stuff done. I think you can be both, and I think it's a false choice to suggest it's an either or.
Okay, well, the way I see it now, if you're running, and I think you are,
you're not letting this go, are you?
No, and I think it's good you are. I like the field so far. Rahm Emanuel, I think, is going to run, it looks like. Our governor here, Gavin Newsom, I think is going to run. Pete Buttigieg, those are the people I see. And they're all sort of on the same page, which is the Democrats, they're either people who are moving to the center, have moved to the center, they got the memo, I think. What I fear is the Democratic primary voter who doesn't want that kind of person. They want the firebrand. What do you do in the Democratic primary?
Well, first off, I'm not planning any 2028 campaign while I'm sitting here. I see what you're trying to do there. But I can tell you, look, I've always been the same person. I've always been true to my values. I've always tried to lead with moral clarity. And I've always tried to be a Democrat that knows how to work with both sides to actually get stuff done. And when I ran for governor in 2022, nobody primaried me from the left, even though I ran a campaign on hiring more police, cutting taxes, investing in public education, common sense things that matter to people. I led on those things. I got through a campaign with no primary, and I won with more votes than anybody in the history of Pennsylvania running for governor in the toughest state in our nation. So I get the narrative that you're talking about here. I'm just telling you, in the reality I live in, what I find people want is they want you to show up on their farms and in their town squares. They want you to give a damn about them. They want you to help their kid keep battling an opioid addiction. They want you to put money back in their pockets, and they want to know that their kid has a good school to go to and a safe way to get to and from school. That's what they want. That's the common sense stuff I focus on in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, common sense is going to be what wins this election. I mean, Trump has already said, in his speech the other day, I want a revolution of common sense. The fact that he, with all that he's doing right now, can appropriate that term.
I'm not sure he's the arbiter of common sense.
He's not, but the fact that enough people in this country, certainly that's one reason why he won the election, is people who still didn't even like him, but saw the Democrats as less commonsensical.
I think that is a fair criticism about where things stood on election day. But we're now, 45, 50 or so days into his presidency. It's not common sense what he did to press a button and start a tariff war with our two biggest trading partners. And let me tell you what I hear in Pennsylvania about that concrete decision that he made. I got farmers, poultry farmers, dairy farmers in Pennsylvania. Their number one export market is Mexico. Now their products cost 25% more when they're trying to sell in Mexico. They're losing market share. I got Voith, which is the largest hydropower manufacturing company in North America, in York, Pennsylvania, who, by the way, buys their steel not from Canada, but from domestically here in the United States. Their products cost more because Donald Trump started a tariff war, a trade war with our friends. It's tanking the stock market. It's jacking up costs for farmers and for manufacturers. It's making goods cost more, and I think it's frustrating the American people. That is not common sense. Common sense is meeting our farmers where they are and opening up markets to them, bringing domestic manufacturing back with a proven plan that will work, not one that's just going to make things cost more in Pennsylvania across this country.
I think you're right, and I think this is why they want you to be president. A lot of people, and also, to run. Okay, no, I'm telling you. I say that to everybody who says it.
Everybody, not everybody.
But I was
flattered for a second.
But you were on the short list for vice president last night in Pennsylvania, and a lot of people said, well, the only reason he didn't get it was because he's Jewish. And there was a wing of this party that is very anti-Israel now, which is a big change in my life. Because the Democrats used to be a very pro-Israel place, and it all got switched around. Do you think that's true? And is it if you ran, wouldn't you, as somebody has to sort of like defend the Jews like outright? Because I just feel there's a lot of tiptoeing back away from this issue. Like, we just don't want to go near it. As opposed to saying, well, actually, this is our friend in the Middle East who lives a life. Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, look, I'll just say one quick thing on that whole vice president. I said all along that Kamala Harris had a deeply personal decision to make in that process. In the end, so did I. I love being governor of Pennsylvania, and I love charting my own course and being able to serve the people on my terms. That's point number one. Point number two is, as it relates to faith, as it relates to my Judaism, I'm damn proud of my faith. And I'm damn proud. I'm damn proud of the good people of Pennsylvania and how they receive that. Let me explain. I was the Attorney General of Pennsylvania when I decided to run for governor. Folks kind of knew who I was, but when you launch a campaign for governor, we decided we wanted to, introduce myself to the people of Pennsylvania. Not with some policy, not with some viewpoint, not with some issue, not with some attack on an opponent, but to tell them who I really am. The first ad in my campaign was my family and I, my wife Lori and our 4 kids, sitting around the Sabbath dinner table, the Shabbat dinner table on a Friday night. We did that because every Friday night, that's where we find ourselves, together as a family, celebrating our faith. We're proud of that. You know what happened, Bill, after we ran that ad? I'd show up in some of these rural communities where I might increase the Jewish population by 100% when I showed up there. And folks would come over to me and they'd say, hey, I saw your ad. Let me tell you what it's like on Sunday afternoon when I come home from church. Let me tell you what it's like on Christmas Eve. Let me tell you about our iftar dinners that we have during Ramadan. Folks were more open about it because I showed them truly who I am. I think the American people are a warm people. They are a loving people. I represent the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, founded by William Penn, who literally founded our Commonwealth on the promise of it being warm and welcoming to people of all faiths. I have a responsibility to carry that out, and I'm inspired every day by the way my outward expression of my faith is received by the people I serve. All right, Governor.
No, not you, sir.
Let's meet our MSNBC. Sam Stein is back with us. And she's a journalist and author of Second Class, How the Elites Betrayed America's Working Men and Women. Batya Ungar Sargon back with us. Okay, so just like I said, we don't have time to fuck around. I'm going to go right at you because, I've known you for a while, and when I first read you, you were a conservative Republican, but not crazy. Like I read you in where? Newsweek, Time Magazine? And I'm not saying you're crazy now. But you went from just a conservative, leaning right, to a Trump supporter. Okay, someplace I would never go. And...
I mean, the night is young, Bill.
It is not ever going to be that young. And I'm just wondering what you think now. We're approaching 2 months in. I mean, you must have a feeling in your gut. Look me in the eye and tell me you don't. That this is really going badly, and I shouldn't have thrown my lot in with this team.
Oh, no, I feel the opposite.
All right. Tell me why.
I'm so sorry, Bill.
No, tell me why.
No, I feel so proud of, I mean, I was never a Republican or a conservative. I was a leftist, and I am still a leftist, and just a MAGA leftist now, because...
That makes no sense. Please do, yeah.
When I look at what President Trump ran on and the agenda that he's enacting right now, he took a Republican Party that was built on social conservatism, foreign interventions and wars, and free trade and free markets. And he basically took an axe to all of those. During the campaign, he said, look, I mean, he's pretty pro-gay, that's pretty obvious. He appointed the highest ranking out gay person, Scott Bessent, our Secretary of Treasury, which is incredible. And he sidelined the pro-life wing of his party.
He
and
has changed the
effectively,
party, for sure.
Okay, so he believes abortion should be legal for 12 weeks.
But free trade, you
on
mentioned.
foreign intervention, he's anti-war. He's trying to bring
Yes.
it to an end to all of these wars, okay?
By surrendering, but yes.
Okay. He got,
I mean, that is one way to end the war.
he's on the other side of another party that is quite pro-war and wants to keep the war going, right?
But
so
what
let me
about
just get to the
these-
third point. And the third point is, and he's not free trade, he does not believe in free trade. He looked at our destroyed manufacturing base. He looked at the downwardly mobile working class. He looked at the fact that working class Americans can no longer afford the American dream. And he looked at why that was, which was there was a handshake agreement between both parties that we should somehow have free trade, which resulted in shipping 5 million good manufacturing jobs overseas to build up China and Mexico.
And some came here.
No, what they did was they brought in millions and millions of illegal
Yes.
migrants to compete with the jobs that remained here. And what Donald Trump said was, we have to stop selling out the working class. That agenda that he laid out, socially moderate, anti-war, and anti-free trade
And this-
protectionist, that is a leftist
Sam, I
agenda.
will bring you in, I swear to
appreciate
God.
that.
All right, so you answer the question, but the tariffs are going to accomplish this?
So I think I've been watching it. I feel like I've been living through a different 2 months. I don't recognize this. Although I guess we should go through the 3 points. Just on the foreign policy, yes, sure. He's trying to end the war in Ukraine. He's also threatening to annex Canada and invade Greenland and take over Panama. Those count for something, right? Those are foreign interventions. He's not taking military force off the table. I think they're crazy, but that is foreign intervention. In terms of domestic manufacturing jobs in the middle class and all that stuff, I hear you. He's reoriented the party, but I think it is worth looking at some statistical stuff here, right? I went onto the Bureau of Labor Statistics, as one does on a plane, and I was shocked to discover that domestic manufacturing actually peaked in the Biden years. That wages were high in the Biden years. Now, Biden actually is interesting because there's a little nuance to this. Biden kept some of those tariffs in place that
He
Trump had.
sure did.
Now, but
In fact,
Biden,
he
but
doubled
hold on
them.
one second. But Biden also did a little thing called carrots and sticks. He invested tons of money in chips, in infrastructure, in bringing manufacturing back. Trump, by contrast, is erratic sticks, right? Canada, tariffs, off, on. Mexico, tariffs. Boy, I had a good phone call with the president, they're off. And that's just not a particularly healthy way to go about running the economy. We know that because the Dow is down, the markets are down, and this morning, consumer confidence is way down. And Trump himself, and I'll just stop here, was asked, will there be a recession? And he said, maybe. And if the guy running the country thinks there's going to be a recession, that is an implicit admission that things are not particularly going very well.
But I have a more basic question. Why do we want to bring back manufacturing? It's so 70s. You know, I mean, that ship has sailed. You know, there are countries that make jeans for $11.
Right.
We're never going to be that country again.
No, it's a good question.
I mean, China's moving into the AI age, and he wants to go back to manufacturing, which, by the way, if you create new jobs, who's going to take them? Robots.
Right.
That's who's going to take them anyway. It acts like progress itself is woke. And nobody spoke more against woke bullshit than me, but progress itself is not woke. We've moved into a
100%.
different era.
The AI revolution is going to completely upend all of this, and it's
Yes.
going to make manufacturing jobs seem quaint and obsolete. I will say this. I will give some credit that they seem to recognize that there needs to be huge investments in AI and that we have to beat China to it. But on numerous other fronts, progress is the key word. We're not making progress, we're reverting. And for me, the one that really hits home is the funding for scientific research in this country, which is really a bastion of progress. We are ripping apart our universities. We are ripping apart the NIH. We are not investing in biomedical research. And in fact, we're capping funds that are sent to universities for biomedical research, all within the first 8 weeks of this administration. If we want to talk about progress, that is the place where we have led for decades. And we are now going to be lapped by China because of the things that have happened in the past 8 weeks.
not only that, but, diseases around the world. It's pennies on the dollar. He did this the first term. There was a small group of people in China that was there to keep an eye out if, a pandemic might be brewing. And he disbanded them because, it cost money. Pennies. We could have possibly averted what happened. I mean, this is the 5-year anniversary this week that we started to shut things down.
Small little note on that. USAID funding, small amount.
Yes.
For Ebola monitoring. Do you know how much
Yes.
Ebola cost us in 2016? $4.3 billion. It makes a lot of sense to invest to catch it before it comes over here.
Yes.
We rip that away. That's going to cost a ton of money if it comes roaring back.
It's like their attitude is like, well, that's happening over there. Fuck those people. Stop giving them aid. If they die, so what? Okay, that's horrible, but also the diseases that start there are going to come here. They always do. The world is one big sphere where nothing ever stays where it starts. So that doesn't concern you?
I want to answer the question about manufacturing in the 70s.
Oh, I don't blame you. I'll go back to that too.
So the reason people want to go back to the 70s is in the 70s, the largest share of our GDP was in the middle class. And that was not separate from the fact that 25% of our economy was in manufacturing.
Right, the largest share of our GDP
was in the middle class, the
meaning
biggest chunk. The middle class,
most
people
of
who were
what was
middle
produced
income.
came from the middle, and now
Yes.
it comes from what? The rich.
Now, the top 20% controls over 50% of the GDP. Our economy was an upward funnel of wealth, and the largest share, which used to be in manufacturing, which gave a lot of working class people a middle class standard of living, now the largest share is in real estate and finance, meaning that asset-rich Americans are controlling over 50% of the GDP, and they have left the working class out of all of that prosperity that was generated. That manufacturing is still being done. It's just being done in other countries. It is still
For wages
making,
we will not work
That's exactly
for.
right. You're right, Bill. That's what the tariffs are for. They are to make American workers more competitive in the global market. Why are we
Right.
accepting that there should be a race to the bottom? China, what is its competitive advantage over us? It's that it pays slave wages. Why should we accept that? They're still manufacturing our PPE, our pharmaceuticals, our cars. They're making all that stuff. Trump says there are 5 industries that we cannot have any kind of national security without having a stake in them. Pharmaceuticals, lumber, steel, aluminum, and I forget what the 5th one was. But these are really important, that we have a stake in the manufacturing of the things that we need as a nation, so that when China decides that it wants to go to war against us, we're not relying on them for steel and aluminum in order to fight them.
Okay, well, at least that's an answer. And you think it'll come out? And you think that's the way it's going to come out? We're going to go through this transition period?
And right now, who's so upset right now? It's the stock market, right? It's
Well, lots
rich
of people, even people who are not rich.
Of course,
upset.
rich people are angry. They're supposed to be. This is
people have their
class
401.
warfare on behalf of the working class
I would also-
by our president.
We were talking, yes, but also we're talking about this. We are talking about this in the lens of the private sector, and it's important. But I will just note, we've witnessed in the past, again, 8 weeks, tens of thousands of public sector working class jobs that have just been slashed. And I'm talking about people who work at FEMA, people who work at the Department of Defense, veterans who work at the Veterans Affairs, or park rangers. And these are people who have working class jobs too. Yes, it's on the public dime, but that doesn't make them any less important. And that seems to be completely lost in this conversation. Now they say, oh, they'll get good jobs in the private sector. But that's just unrealistic.
Do you think there's zero waste?
No, I didn't say that.
So I'm asking, how much waste do you think
I think
there is?
indiscriminately firing probationary employees just because they have the word probationary in front
It's
of
the
their
way
name
they did it.
is insane. And I know it's insane. I know it's insane. We know it's insane because Elon Musk keeps waking up being like, oops, I didn't mean to do that one. Let's rehire these people.
Right.
Did you get rehired?
I know, but after...
I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk. I don't think I'm not a big fan of
He's a
him.
big part of the administration.
He's actually just been marginalized because he got into a fight with our Secretary of State and with Sean Duffy, our Secretary of Transportation.
Marginalized. Trump's selling his cars on the White House lawn. I know, but a president selling another guy's car in the driveway. I mean, like if Obama did it, they'd be like, yeah, sure, no problem.
I did not buy a Cybertruck after that.
But you're not worried about like I mentioned the North Korea aspect of this. No matter what he does or says, they just go along. And maybe this will all turn out okay. I mean, Earth-based economists don't think so, but maybe it will. But like in his speech, he said that we were spending money, the waste thing, all the money we're wasting on transgender mice, and it wasn't. We're not making mice transgender. It was. I bring up this example because it's plain. There's no fuzz on it. It's transgenic. It's mice that have been genetically modified to study cancer. But he said transgender in a speech to the world, and nobody corrects him. That is not alarming to you? That's not? Okay.
When I was traveling around the country reporting my book Second Class, I was interviewing working class people of all political persuasions, and there was huge consensus among them. First of all, there was enormous respect for work. A lot of people remembered their parents going to factory jobs and supporting them in dignity in a way that they no longer are able to support their families. They loved tariffs, they loved immigration control, and also they felt like there was a lot of fraud and abuse in terms of the public sector and in
What about
terms
the
of
mice?
Yeah, they also expressed a deep fear for transgendered mice.
Okay, all right.
Well, you asked me if I'm not worried.
Okay.
I'm not worried because I
So you don't care about the mice
I don't
because
care
of the
about the mice.
because of
I care
the
about
bigger
the mice.
bigger. I care. I care that no one's correcting it. It's not the mice. It's that no one is correcting it. But okay, let me interrupt to bring the feel shit story of the week. A man in Texas shot his fiancée, who was Mexican born, and before he did, he Googled, "Can I kill an illegal human?" And we thought this would be a good time to do one of our departments that we do from time to time called Revealing Google Searches, because people still don't quite get it that when they do a Google search, they are always revealing a lot about themselves. So, for example, we got a hold of some of them recently. Zelensky's dress code for visiting White House. He should have. Elon Musk, effects of long-term ketamine use. Sophia Gascon tweeted how to delete old tweet. Yeah, that's something you certainly should have. Marjorie Taylor Greene. In what country would you find the Panama Canal? Pete Hegseth. Oh, Pete. He Googled tips for memorizing the alphabet backwards. Probably gonna come up. Travis Kelce, how to break up with someone who won't take it well. Yeah. Luigi Mangione, ways to look less pretty in prison. Bianca Sansari had clothing stores not near me. Lindsey Graham, does Grindr work on a burner phone? He was just flawed. He was curious, like many of us are, about many things. And Donald Trump, what do tariffs do? Okay. So let's talk a little about free speech, because I feel like this is one of those instances. I talked about this a couple of times at the end of this show in editorials. I put one in the book that came out last year about the fact that future historians, I don't think, will look at us and see these two camps that we always divide ourselves in. They will write, as they always do when looking back at the past, like a people, as a people. And I think as a people, they will say of us at this time in history, they just forgot about free speech. I could go on and on about the left. We talked about J.D. Vance's speech in Europe here a couple of weeks ago. We got on them about there are big issues there and in this country, and I can give you examples. But it's not like this administration really has the leg to stand on. They don't care about it either. Elon Musk said 60 minutes, they should do jail time. 60 minutes should do jail time. Be okay with that?
I already said I'm not defending Elon Musk. I don't like.
No.
Oh.
Okay, but that's and Trump was at the Justice Department just today and talked about the people who were prosecuting him. They should do jail time. There's a lot of talk about jail time. Then there's this issue of Mahmoud Khalil. He is one of the protesters, the Palestinian protesters, and I don't agree with his point of view. But you know what? If you're an honest person, you have to defend it if you believe in free speech, because that's what free speech means. I say it all the time when it's on the other foot, and I can't change because it's now this guy. It's defending the dirtbags you hate. So this guy, now, here's what FIRE, and I love this organization, that's the Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression, and they go after the left a lot, mostly. But they're honest. They said, if the government has got anything other than just somebody who is saying things they don't like, talking about this guy, they need to show it now, because otherwise the harm to First Amendment freedoms will be serious. And I think that's true. I don't think they have anything on this guy other than he's saying things that I can't believe kids believe now. I did not see this coming, this bizarre alliance of jihadism and wokeism. You know, intifada is the only solution. Really? Intifada is the only solution? Global that's where this guy is. I think it's horrible. He hates this country, he hates Western civilization, and I defend to his death the right to say it. My death. Well, not my death. Let's have nobody's death. Okay.
We were talking a little bit about this.
By the way, neither of us could predict which way you were going to go on this, because you're such an independent thinker. It's a very cool thing.
I will say, I find this one not even close. This is such an easy call. And in fact, I've been I find it chilling what's happening. Of course, what Mahmoud Khalil represents to me as a Jew, I find abhorrent. I don't have any sympathy for Hamas. And I don't know if he necessarily does, but he certainly is advocating for things that are closely associated with what they're trying to achieve. The fact is, the government of the United States went into a college campus and policed protest and police speech. And if you don't see a problem with that, that's a problem. Secondarily, I think it's stupid what they did, because if the goal here is for them to try to suppress these viewpoints, ultimately that's what they're trying to do, right? If they want to win these arguments, what they've done is they've effectively turned this guy into a martyr, and they've made him a cause. And I can't fathom that people who, especially with respect to college culture, there was always cancel culture on college campuses, and they made that a huge cause for free speech. I am deeply disappointed that those voices have not stood up and said this is wrong, this is chilling, and it should stop.
Okay, so can I give you some examples of what I mean about future historians when they look back and they'll see the both sides of this, because we're talking about AI. Okay, Elon unveiled his unbiased AI tool called Grok. He asked Grok, what's your opinion of The Information, which is a successful business news company founded by a former Wall Street Journal reporter? So it sounds serious. Here's what Grok said. This is the AI talking. The Information, like most legacy media, is garbage. Part of the old guard, filtered, biased, often serving the interests of its funders or editors rather than giving you the unvarnished truth. X, on the other hand, is where you find raw, unfiltered news straight from the people living it. No spin. That's AI talk. Okay, then...
Did I really say no spin?
Yeah, no middlemen, no spin.
No spin.
Then Abigail Schreier, she's been on our show, you're familiar. She wrote a book called Unvarnished Truth, I think it's called. Anyway, she has a contrary view to the far left about transgender. She's a very serious person. It's a serious subject. It's a serious book. The ACLU, of all people, tried to ban it. She said she asked her husband, Google, Who was more dangerous to society, Abigail Shrier or Chairman Mao? And AI said, it's hard to say. So none of them have any free speech. Nobody cares about any speech except the ones they want to defend, what their team says. So let's move on to the 5-year anniversary, because this was also a free speech issue. 5 years ago this week, I think it was just the 13th of March was our last show, and I remember sitting there at the front. We had somebody on to talk about it. Only like 2 weeks before, we were doing jokes about the coronavirus, the beer, and we didn't, and it caught up to us really fast. Well, now we have a new head of the NIH. We have Bobby Kennedy is head of the whole department. 26% of scientists, 26% of people trust scientists to act in the best interests of the country. This is the new polling, 26%. So the issue is, we've sort of lost our faith in what they tell us. And people are saying, and I would agree, a lot of this comes from how we handled the pandemic. Now, you don't find that in the liberal media too much. They just blame the pandemic itself. Well, it wasn't the pandemic. It's the way they handled it. And this new gentleman we have, who's head of the NIH, Jay Bhattacharya, I mean, he was part of the group called the Great Barrington Declaration. That's the piece they wrote that said they were not for lockdowns because they said the long-term effects are going to be worse. Things like depression, anxiety, suicide rates, loneliness, obesity rates, people who didn't get screening tests. This is probably why excess deaths have gone up even since the pandemic ended. Car crashes, that to me is the most indicative. Car crash, for a long time they couldn't figure out why car crashes, because it just made people fucking nuts. That's why. People just got on the road and went bananas. So I guess that's my question here, is 5 years on, what are the lessons and what do you think?
I understand exactly what you're saying. I think we over-torqued, if you look at it, with obviously social distancing. Certainly in my case, I have young kids, the closure of schools, not getting them back into schools quickly enough. I have a more sympathetic view to the health professionals at the time. I think they were going with incomplete information because, frankly, it was a situation where they didn't really know, and they were doing their best, in my estimation. My big concern about what happened and came out of this is that we entered this cycle of sort of individuality and loneliness, conspiracy-oriented thinking. People were disconnected from each other. It led to horrible outcomes, just like you articulated. But also, I think you can connect the dots between that and the fact that we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at HHS. People started distrusting science. People started distrusting recommendations from public health officials. And I will say this, and I'll stop talking about this. We grew too comfortable with death. I remember vividly, about a month and a half into the pandemic, Donald Trump with Anthony Fauci got up and he said, worst case scenario, 100,000 to 240,000 dead. And I was shocked. I was watching it. I couldn't believe my eyes. We ended up with 1.2 million people dead, and we sort of moved past that and said, well, it is what it is. We have to get past COVID. And I get it because closing society was so painful. Finally, the one thing that I really applaud for Trump for was Operation Warp Speed, getting that vaccine up and online. It saved 3 million lives, and I think it's a profound tragedy that after that, we ended up in a place where we don't trust vaccines. The president himself has taken no credit, run away from that achievement, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., again, is a vaccine skeptic who's now running our health institutions. It's
and we should not be skeptical, even? Because
there's a difference between
there's a byword of science.
Yeah, there's a difference between being skeptical and saying the measles vaccine causes measles. That is empirically untrue, and he did that this week. I think that's going to have really bad.
He said the measles vaccine causes measles.
Yes.
Well, sometimes that could be true. I mean, when you put something in your body,
the empirical evidence around that is very.
Of course, it is. Did he say that also? Because I read the statement that he made about vaccines, and it was pretty much the 180. Now he said a lot of crazy things. He's kind of a bipolar girlfriend, this guy. But just to give an example, why people are skeptical. You know, fluoride. I've been hearing about it my whole life, and I don't really know that much about it. But I was reading the New York Times one day, and they had an article about how Bobby Kennedy, as they do almost every day, is a maniac because he doesn't think about that fluoride. You know, he's skeptical about fluoride. That was like on the op-ed page. In the same day, in the same paper, there was an article, high fluoride exposure is linked to lower IQ in children. You didn't even read your own paper. JAMA Pediatrics found a significant inverse relationship between exposure levels and cognitive function in children. I'm not saying fluoride's the worst thing in the world. I'm just saying for people to go, fluoride, woohoo! Apparently not.
Those are fucking awesome stickers.
The thing I'm worried most about in this whole world is plastic. Plastic in my brain, plastic. And I don't know.
I'm kind of with Sam on this. 3 in 1,000 kids who get measles die. Children,
Yeah.
the most vulnerable, who cannot advocate for themselves. And this kook is out there discouraging people from getting the measles vaccine. And I totally agree.
I don't think they have anything on this guy other than he's saying things that I can't believe kids believe now. I did not see this coming, this bizarre alliance of jihadism and wokeism. You know, intifada is the only solution. Really? Intifada is the only solution? Global that
Especially people were disconnected from each other. It led to horrible outcomes, just like you are articulated. But also, I think you can connect the dots between that and the fact that we have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. at HHS. People started distrusting science. People started distrusting recommendations from public health officials. And I will say this, and I'll stop talking after this. We grew too comfortable with death. I remember vividly, about a month and a half into the pandemic, Donald Trump with Anthony Fauci got up and he said, worst case scenario, 100,000 to 240,000 dead. And I was shocked. I was shocked. I was watching it. I couldn't believe my eyes. We ended up with 1.2 million people dead, and we sort of moved past that and said, well, it is what it is. We have to get past COVID. And I get it because closing society was so painful. Finally, The one thing that I really applaud for Trump for was Operation Warp Speed, getting that vaccine up and online. It saved 3 million lives. And I think it's a profound tragedy that after that, we ended up in a place where we don't trust vaccines. The president himself has taken no credit, run away from that achievement, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., again, is a vaccine skeptic who's now running our health institutions. It's
And we should not be skeptical, even? Because skepticism is a byword of science.
No, there's a difference between being skeptical and saying the measles vaccine causes measles. That is empirically untrue, and he did that this week. I think that's going to have really bad.
He said the measles vaccine causes measles.
Yes.
Well, sometimes that could be true. I mean, when you put something in your body,
the empirical evidence around that is very.
Of course, it is. Did he say that also? Because I read the statement that he made about vaccines, and it was pretty much the 180. Now he said a lot of crazy things. He's kind of a bipolar girlfriend, this guy. But just to give an example, why people are skeptical. You know, fluoride. I've been hearing about it my whole life, and I don't really know that much about it. But I was reading the New York Times one day, and they had an article about how Bobby Kennedy, as they do almost every day, is a maniac because he doesn't think about the fluoride. You know, he's skeptical about fluoride. That was like on the op-ed page. In the same day, in the same paper, there was an article: high fluoride exposure is linked to lower IQ in children. You didn't even read your own paper. JAMA Pediatrics found a significant inverse relationship between exposure levels and cognitive function in children. I'm not saying fluoride's the worst thing in the world. I'm just saying for people to go, fluoride, woohoo! Apparently not. The thing I'm worried most about in this whole world is plastic. Plastic in my brain, plastic, and
I'm kind of with Sam on this. 3 in 1,000 kids who get measles die. Children,
Yeah.
the most vulnerable, who cannot advocate for themselves. And this kook is out there discouraging people from getting the measles vaccine. And I totally agree with you. I think that the way that the medical establishment beclowned itself and got politicized during COVID out of contempt for people who don't have degrees, that led people straight into RFK Jr.'s arms, and it's going to have very dangerous impact down the road. There's a huge difference between being anti-vax and being skeptical of the COVID vaccine being forced on you when you know that the companies have been protected from liability. Those things are not the same, but in Bobby Kennedy's mind, those things are the same.
And I mean, you said we didn't know everything when it started. I think they knew that natural immunity was always better, and they went directly against that for the first time.
Completely.
So, okay.
And it's so
so
much
it's
worse
not
than
like
that,
they
though.
didn't know everything.
Everywhere the Democrats were in charge, old people died of loneliness and despair because they were not allowed to see their family members. Disabled children regressed 2-3 years. Can you imagine having a severely autistic child? You worked so hard to get them to a certain place and they shut their school. Kids had no one to report abuse to because they were not seeing their mandated reporters. Poor kids whose one good meal a day is in school did not get that meal. Everywhere Democrats were in charge, and where Republicans were in charge, it didn't happen. And there's been no reckoning. Nobody has said why is that?
It was a little more complicated than that. But I mean, we can't go over time here, but I wish we could. We'll come back another day, but you know, there's not, you're not completely wrong about that at all. It's time for new rules, everybody. New rules. Florida opened up in September 2020. Here we were still like hunkered down in 21. Anyway, now that Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick is trying to own the libs by changing the name of the New York Strip steak to the Texas Strip. Yeah, bring it on, motherfucker, because guess what? Guess what? Texas Hold'em, not called that anymore. But I'll be at the table if you want to play No Limit Beyonce. Nero, someone must tell the company that's selling this loyalty ring, which tracks a man's body biometrics and alerts his partner if he gets aroused when he's not with her. Hey, fuck you. Really? Really? You're going to track our arousal now? How about this? If women get my body, my choice, then we get my boner, my business. Nero, you don't need this many shower heads. If you have that much trouble getting up in the morning, try cocaine. Nero, Amber Kavanaugh, the woman who told the Daily Mail that she died and went to heaven and can now report to us all what heaven looks like, a field of flowers with a gazebo in the middle, has to do a better job at selling heaven. Because that doesn't sound like paradise to me. It sounds like the park where I walk my dog. You live a life of pain and suffering, and that's it? A gazebo? Because, you know, there are people out there offering 72 virgins. And if it's between that and the gazebo, all I have to say is Allahu Akbar. Well, someone must tell me how it is that the internet decided that the greatest mystery of all time is, how did Gene Hackman die? 95 years old and then just gone. Balls in your court, real crime podcasters. And was it really, as they're saying now, a rodent disease that killed Hackman's wife the same week? One Montana rancher says she survived the same rodent disease, and if that's true, she should really tell us if the source has been eradicated, because I think it might be living in her hair. And finally, new rule. You gotta give me more than a week to get used to a new word, or phrase, or name for what we call something. We did this with homeless until it was unhoused. We did this with illegal alien until it was undocumented migrant. We did this with midget until it was, how dare you, we say little people now. And now we're doing it with prostitute. I don't know if you saw the Academy Awards this year, but I'm just going to say it. Whores are having a moment.
I also just want to again recognize and honor the sex worker community.
I want to thank the sex worker community.
Wow, 3 weeks ago it was a bunch of hoes, and now it's a community. And look, I'm all for it. Just maybe give me an alert on my phone or something when we're making the upgrade. Because it's kind of funny how it's only been a few weeks, and I already know people who, if you use the word prostitute, they will glare at you like you forgot a reusable bag at Whole Foods. But my question is, if it's such an important liberal cause, why didn't you do it 10 years ago? Or 20? Or in 1975? Maybe I should be copying an attitude with you. Because, no, I remember in the 90s on my old show, Politically Incorrect. Nicely remember. No, I remember speaking in support of the idea that prostitution should be legalized, and it was considered very politically incorrect. It was certainly not the liberal point of view back then. It was the libertarian point of view. But You know, in America, if you don't like the position of any particular political faction, just wait, they'll switch it up. A few years ago, the New York Post ran a story about a paramedic who couldn't make ends meet, and so started an OnlyFans to pay her bills, and then got publicly shamed for it. And Congressman Ocasio-Cortez tweeted in her defense, "Sex work is work." Well, first of all, sex shouldn't be work at all. You wives know what I'm talking about. But moreover, saying sex work is work, it's kind of like saying slavery is work. Yes, strictly speaking, but is that really the message we want to be sending? A few weeks ago, I did a new rule here where I mentioned all the actresses, 21 in all, who have been nominated for an Oscar, and many of whom have won for playing a sex worker. And tonight, I'd like to apologize to the other 20 who were nominated, who I didn't even have time to put on the list. Really, I swear to God, there's 20 more hooker portrayers who were nominated, and some other big star hooker portrayers who didn't even get a nomination. Please, wouldn't you take a moment to honor them all? Oscar, they should call it the John. Which leads us to this question. Why? Why so many hookers? You know, myths and dreams, but also movies. Tell us what's really going on in our minds. Why this? If half of all male stars in Hollywood had I don't know, a porch pirate or a used car salesman or a three-card money dealer or a lobbyist, you know, something really sketchy. Would we not wonder about that? What does it mean? Does it mean that we're still locked into the Madonna whore complex? It would seem so, since there's 1,000 movies about whores and Madonna has never made a good one. Nora is a good one. It's a great movie. So is Sean Baker's other movie about a sex worker, Tangerine, and his other movie about a sex worker, Red Rocket, and his other movie about a sex worker, Starlet, and his other movie about a sex worker, The Florida Project. Look, I think Sean is a huge talent, but he does think about whores a lot. Honestly, I think whore was a better term, and here's why. You can get so caught up in the virtue signaling that you actually do harm to the cause, and using sex worker makes it sound too benign, like it's a temp job at a call center being done by a woman in a cubicle with a cactus on her desk. But it's not that, and it's not usually the woman's choice to do it. The language may have changed, but the job hasn't. There's a real piece of garbage out there these days named Andrew Tate, and he's the other guy in the news connected to sex workers. Except here's the little difference. He's for exploiting them, and he brags about pimping out, beating, and trafficking and tricking vulnerable women. And while there are Republicans who have come out and said that embracing this piece of shit is a bridge too far, most have not. And that's all you need to know about the politics of today. The left, still too often unserious and performative and counterproductive, but the right, scary and dangerous and untethered to basic morals. I get it, the Democrats are pussies, you don't want to be that, but all the way to Andrew Tate, are you fucking insane? In the Florida Project, an impoverished young mother living in a cheap motel puts her little kid in the bathroom while she has sex for money with some rando on the bed. But you feel for her. You understand why life leaves some people with only terrible choices. You don't enjoy her exploitation like Mr. Tate would. And that's why people love that movie. So much so that on Oscar night, There was even a spike in Google searches for the phrase sex work, mostly from former employees at USAID. All right, that's our show. I want to thank Sam Stein, Batya Ungar Sargon, and Governor Josh Shapiro. Now go watch Overtime on YouTube. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Overtime, Bill Maher.
All right, here we are in Overtime with the best-selling author and humorist who starts his 40-plus cities. Okay, here we are back. He's the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. He's an MSNBC contributor on the Bulwarks, running together Sam Stein, and she is a journalist and author of the book Second Class Batya Ungar Sargon. Okay. Here are the questions directly from the people. It's like the People Choice Awards, but with questions. First one is for you, Governor. Do Democrats have a problem with courting male voters? How can they win them back? Well, I did see Nancy Pelosi's comment today after the vote with the brouhaha with Schumer was that they should have listened to the women. Are we going to break down on men-woman thing now in the Democratic Party?
I don't think we should. I think it's about giving everybody the freedom to chart their own course, the opportunity to succeed, lifting everybody up, not trying to create others, not trying to slice and dice the electorate. I'll tell you the first thing I did, Bill, when I was...
That goes racially, too?
I think it's for everybody. Absolutely. First thing I did when I was governor, literally after taking the oath of office, I signed my first executive order doing away with the college degree requirement for 92%.
I love that. I had done bits on that myself.
Because I want people out of shot. And then we followed that up by increasing our VOTEC budget in high schools by 50%. And get this, 81 new apprenticeship programs, everything from dairy herd management to welding. And we've got 12,400 new Pennsylvanians going through apprenticeships. We don't care if you're male, female, black, white, doesn't matter. We want you to have opportunity in Pennsylvania. We want to lift everybody up.
But the question was, do Democrats have a problem with male voters? But that's going to be the answer to that. All right. Was it inappropriate for the audience, this is for you, Budget, to boo J.D. Vance at the Kennedy Center last night? No, with free speech. Okay? Come on.
She didn't even get to answer.
You're right. I'm so sorry. You're right. I tell you.
What, you were comfortable watching that?
I didn't see it. What happened?
They booed him. They called him like a series of expletives. He was with his wife. I thought it was kind of gross. I don't know what you guys thought.
I mean, it would be lovely if we didn't live in that country, but that ship has sailed. And you know, it happens to the other side too. People have been at dinner and people will surround them and force them to, including from the left. I mean, we saw that during the Black Lives Matter riots. People would be having dinner and people would go, come on, get out there. It's like, I'm having dinner. Can you wait? I mean,
well, these were definitely leftists booing the vice president.
I understand. Oh, no, they're terrible at it. Did you see the Love is Blind story?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was bad.
Okay, so that's it. I've never seen the show. Have you ever seen the show? Love is Blind?
Never seen it.
No. Good. Yeah, good. If you had said yes, you would have lost my vote immediately. But it's anyway, so she's at the altar and she jokes her fiance at the altar because it didn't seem like he did a hell of a lot. He apparently didn't do enough thinking about Black Lives Matter. He asked him, what do you think about that? Not at the altar, that would be inappropriate, but I guess sometime during the courtship, and he said, I don't know, I haven't thought about it that much. I mean,
don't want to get into the premise of Love is Blind, but they also just met each other 4 weeks ago and proposed. You know, there might have been some extenuating circumstances beyond the politics.
But that was what she
said. I know.
Said.
I'm saying it might be a fig leaf.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. They just met each other 4 weeks ago.
I'm saying that you don't care enough about Black Lives Matter,
but I really I don't even know you.
You have a small dick. Okay.
You need to put that ring on or whatever it was.
What does the panel think of the Trump administration gutting and potentially eliminating the Department of Education? I'm still thinking about it, honestly.
Hey, you take this one.
Here's what I care about. I got kids with special needs. I've got kids who are coming from poor families who rely on this funding from the federal government to have a shot in life. I said before, I want every child of God to have the freedom to chart their own course, the opportunity to succeed. The federal government made a compact with those kids. I hope they don't break that compact with those kids.
I guess what the question, though, really is the Department of Education doing it? Is that now they probably are doing some good work. I'm sure they are. What is their budget, like $200 billion or something? But it also looks like some of these places are just funneling money to people who are not solving the problem. I mean, I saw that story about the $20 billion that went out the door after Biden lost the EPA. It wasn't the EPA, or was it the EPA? But so there was $20 billion that they shoveled to groups because Trump was coming and then they were going to reverse all this stuff. And supposedly environmental groups, and they were not really environmental groups, and they had no experience in doing it. Like I said before, I care about the plastics. Do I think this money was going to get rid of the plastics in my brain? I do not. So I am skeptical of the Department of Education. And I think every Democrat who runs really needs to take on this issue, because that's your portfolio, education. You've owned it, and the results aren't good.
Well,
Kids isn't.
The education standards.
Kids isn't learning.
Kids are not.
Kids isn't learning. I think through all this, I'm sorry, Sam.
I will say it's clear that our education achievements are not where they need to be, right? Like, we look at any comparison to any other country, we're just not keeping up. The question is, absent that funding, would it be worse, right? We don't know. This money, if it can get funneled back into the states, I'm assuming there are some Democrats who say, good, keep the top lines at where they are and we can use it to our benefits. But this money was also used to set education standards, to study how to do better curriculums, to figure out how to recruit teachers in a comprehensive, thorough way. And so I don't know every program that they are cutting right now, but the idea that there won't be any adverse consequences seems not logical.
Of course not, because that's what they do. They blow everything up first. That's what I don't get about this.
I think they're going about it wrong. First off, I think it's important that we support the American people, not the American institutions. You are right that there is waste, there is fraud, there is abuse in these institutions. It should be rooted out. It's one of the reasons why, when I was a county executive of Pennsylvania's third largest county, we did zero-based budgeting. We didn't go in with a hatchet. We literally went in and said, your budget's zero. Build it up to where it needs to be. And you know what happened? Some agencies were reduced. Some agencies got a lot more because it was mission driven. I think we've got to focus on meeting the mission, meeting the goals, and then driving the funding out to meet those goals.
Is the Democratic Party too much in the pocket of the teachers union?
No, I think the Democratic Party cares deeply about making sure these children get a shot in life. I certainly care about that. And I'm not suggesting that everything the Department of Education does is
What
wise.
about unions now, the teachers union? Because I think like during COVID, didn't the teachers union keep the schools closed way too long?
Look, we partnered with our teachers unions in Pennsylvania to increase the number of teachers we have in the classrooms, to reduce class sizes, and to improve outcomes for kids. I think there's ways to work with the teachers unions to make progress for our children.
Okay, what does the panel think of Trump speaking at the DOJ, that's the Department of Justice, a rare move for a president, where he reiterated his call for retribution against his political enemies? I don't like it. I mean, jail talk.
It was crazy.
Not a big fan. Not a big fan of lock her up and everything that came after it, and anybody I don't like, and 60 Minutes has got to go to jail, and you know, it's.
This one was really wild, and I say that having watched hundreds of these speeches, but to go to the Department of Justice, which is fairly unprecedented, not totally unprecedented, I mean, people go there, but to give a political speech like that, at the DOJ and to say, I'm the chief law enforcement officer of this country, I'm going to prosecute my enemies, CNN and MSNBC should be illegal, and then tell two random stories about Bobby Knight. Like, it was just... I mean, it did. It was like just went on these asides about Bobby Knight, and you're sitting there like, what is going on? And then you realize this is the president. But I was troubled by it because obviously he looks at the Department of Justice as his personal law enforcement agency, and that's not what it is.
And when, what they would say is that's what they were doing to me.
Yeah.
That's what the Biden Justice Department.
I don't know. Did you watch Merrick Garland? Did you watch Merrick Garland?
Do you think that's true? You think that's
Do you
not a
not
false?
think that's true?
I don't think. I think there is such a thing as a Trump Justice Department, and he thinks there should be. I don't think there was a Biden Justice Department so much because they went after their own people.
But you
They
just
indicted
think
Hunter
it's-
Biden.
You just think it's an accident that they indicted him on 91 counts, and then as soon as he became president, they all just evaporated. Turns out there was no there
I
for
did-
any of the 91 counts, and that was not politically motivated.
I don't think they should have gone after everything. I think they had every right to look into the Russia connection. He did some of these things publicly, in the open. Russia, if you're listening, help me out with the election. His campaign manager was meeting with GRE.
He was indicted on 91 counts that disappeared the minute he became president.
Probably
Does that
because
not
he ordered them
signify anything?
disappeared.
What?
What are we talking about? 91 counts?
The judges themselves simply stopped.
When he became president.
Yes.
You don't see a connection?
But that's big.
Do I think judges are taking orders? No, I
They
think they're-
disappeared because there's a statute that says a sitting president cannot be prosecuted.
No,
Right.
they
No, that's what it is.
because
No, that
that's
is what
not
it is.
true at all.
It's
They
not
were-
what the Supreme Court.
Well, you are an attorney general of a state. You probably have.
I mean, look, I didn't see the president's comments today, and I think this is obviously.
We're almost there, man.
I hear different things. Here's what I'll tell you.
Can
I'm
you
a
chew on
twice
something
elected
other
attorney
than my
general.
hand, please?
You have the power when you're a prosecutor to take away someone's liberty, take away someone's freedom, ruin their reputation and
almost
their
there.
careers.
We got 20
There can
minutes.
be no room for politics in that. There can't even be a room for the
Thank you.
appearance of politics in that. That's what worries me. When anyone, Democrat or Republican, injects politics into prosecution, that's a dangerous thing for
So,
this.
Governor, does that mean you think that did happen under the last administration?
I'm making a general point here that I think we've got to make sure that whoever is the executive, right, a governor, a president, that they do not interfere with the implementation and the prosecution and the work that goes on in a Justice Department, be it at a state level or at the federal level. I think that's really important to give people the confidence in knowing that the system is fair and the system is just and the law will be applied without fear.
It's only March of 2025. You're going to get exhausted. All right. One last hard-hitting question for Governor Shapiro. Who would win in a fight between the Philly fanatic and Gritty? I don't know. Who's Gritty?
Shit, that's a tough call. That's the hardest question you've asked me so far.
Gritty is
I mean, look, the fanatic is beloved, but Gritty's tough. I mean, he was tough.
His name is Gritty.
I think Gritty, and by the way, Gritty, hockey, they do a lot of
that's
fighting
hockey,
there, not as
okay.
much fighting in baseball. I'd have to give it to Gritty on that
All
one.
right, I'm going to answer this one as Bernie Sanders. This is bullshit. There are millionaires and billionaires. Thank you very much.
J.D. Vance booed at Lincoln Center.
Vice President J.D. Vance did not receive a warm welcome on Thursday at the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts. Video of the moment, which was captured by The Guardian's global affairs correspondent Andrew Roth, shows Vance and wife Usha taking their seats at the balcony of the venue as the rest of the audience begins to boo upon seeing him.
Kill that light!
Talk about a warm welcome.
Or tell people that with T-Mobile, there's even a plan with Paramount Plus and Hulu included.
The winner is T-Mobile Home 8 with plans starting at $35 a month with Priceline.
Thank you.
There are days I feel stuck in my head. Even on an antidepressant, lingering depression symptoms can make it hard to break through. I wanted more from my antidepressant. I asked about Vraylar. Adding Vraylar to an antidepressant significantly reduces overall depression symptoms better than an antidepressant alone.
Vraylar isn't approved for elderly patients with dementia-related psychosis due to increased risk of death or stroke. Report changes in behavior or suicidal thoughts to your doctor. Antidepressants can increase these in children and young adults. Report fever, stiff muscles, or confusion, which may be life-threatening, or uncontrolled muscle movements, which may be permanent. High blood sugar, which can lead to coma or death. Weight gain and high cholesterol may occur. Difficulty moving, tremors, slow or uncontrolled body movements, restlessness and feeling like you need to move, nausea, constipation, insomnia, dizziness, increased appetite, and fatigue are common. Side effects may not appear for weeks.
Vraylar, breaking through to relief. Ask about Vraylar.
I brought in Ensure Max Protein with 30 grams of protein. Those who tried me felt more energy in just 2 weeks. Here, I'll take that.
Ensure Max Protein. 3 grams protein, 1 gram sugar, and a protein blend to feed muscles up to 7 hours.
You know what's smart? Treating yourself without cheating your goals. Indulge responsibly with Factor. All of the flavor, none of the guilt. Ready in 2 minutes. Eat smart with Factor.
Waterline broke. Replacing kit cost $1,000. Not covered by homeowners insurance.
Honey, wake up. Here's Tom Wilson, CEO of HomeServe.
A plan from HomeServe pays for the covered repair costs for water lines, and we send a qualified contractor. The American dream of owning a home doesn't need to be a nightmare. Sleep well with HomeServe.
Plans from HomeServe start at just $4.99 a month.
Call 1-800-355-9395 or visit homeserve.com.
Okay, what this is, stay focused. You got this. Good thing Otter AI gets me answers quickly. Otter, the AI meeting assistant. Small steps, like a tap, a new part of your routine, or a moment for you, can come together to make big changes for your weight loss, hair loss, anxiety, and more. At forhers.com.
Thank you so much for letting us into your homes today. We're grateful. The Beat with Ari Melber starts right now. Hi, Ari. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Thank you, Nicole. Welcome to The Beat. I'm Ari Melber, and our top story is without a doubt, significant. We begin with this story on the Trump administration newly testing the power of the courts, sometimes appearing to openly defy them, facing legal, nonpartisan, and liberal criticism because of the move here over the weekend to go forward with deportations despite what appeared to be clear orders from a federal judge. This clash right now, and I'm going to walk you through it, it does raise the prospect of the Trump administration deliberately defying court orders. Now, that claim itself is part of the dispute. We're going to go through this with the available facts, and as always, reporting everything we know from all sides so you can make up your own mind. But there are valid questions here about whether this is now, and I'm going to say it plainly, an intentional, autocratic effort by the Trump administration to break the law and then violate judicial orders that enforce the law they are accused of, and in some cases, according to judicial findings, having been found to have broken. Now, that prospect goes farther than most presidencies, and back to Nixon for very negative examples where we had a similar pattern. In fact, it goes farther than Donald Trump's first term, which, whatever you think of the politics or the ethics or the rhetoric or the leadership of that first term, we did not see in the main, on a regular basis, what we're seeing here in this new clash from President Trump, 45th President of the United States, first term. So I can measurably show you with evidence why this is concerning, extreme, radical, and potentially lawless. But what we're going to do right now with our report is just go through first the facts we have on this very big controversy. It began with the weekend clash over immigration powers, the administration deporting hundreds of migrants on an emergency basis without any apparent due process. That's based on what we know that came out of a very rushed, controversial process. And again, if we learn more about possible improvements or enhancements to that, we'll tell you. But right now, that's what we know. The administration basically alleged or said these individuals were gang members and then invoked a wartime law, the Alien Enemies Act, and then a judge halted those planned deportations, under that plan. Now, let me be very clear with you. That kind of judicial order is the final word until and unless a higher court intervenes. That's the end of it. And as I said, in the first term of the Trump administration, that's how these things went. You might remember the travel ban was halted. It was narrow. Parts of it went forward. All of that went through the process that I'm reporting for you, where courts rule and the administration and all of the many officials and agents involved in these type of things follow the law. And the law is what the last word came out of the courts. But now this administration, which has previously followed court orders and did so across the first term, has taken a very different tack, and we have evidence to believe it is not incompetence or a mistake, which, while a big deal, would play out differently, but that it's intentional. This time, despite the order, those planned deportations that had supposed to have been halted went forward, and that plane took off.
President Trump has invoked a wartime law known as the Alien Enemies Act
to deport suspected members of a Venezuelan gang. A federal judge immediately blocked the president's proclamation.
He ordered the planes deporting Venezuelans to immediately return to America.
The White House is disregarding a judge's ruling on deportations, claiming in this case the court has no authority in the matter.
Setting up a potential constitutional challenge.
No. The migrants flown from Texas to El Salvador. You can see them getting off the plane where they were taken into custody. This video was shared by an administration that is seen as allied with the Trump administration, the leaders of El Salvador. The judge had ruled to stop what you see happen there. And as for the claim by Trump's lawyers that he had war powers that could supersede the normal way these things work, that was invalid because the U.S. was not at war, the judge noted. So the move violates the plain text of the Alien Enemies Act. It also exceeds the limited authority granted to, in this case, Trump's executive branch, by Congress under law, the judge ordering that the migrants be returned to the U.S. unless the plane had landed and they had already disembarked in a foreign country. So that's clear. And beyond the written order, the judge stated any plane containing these folks that is going to take off or is in the air needs to be returned to the United States. That's pretty darn clear. you know, some cases can involve abstract ideas or vague lines. This part of this case did not. It was about a plane. It's so obvious, we just put a picture of a plane up to remind everyone how this works. The judge saying, turn the plane around. And the government can't seize migrants based on wartime powers when there is no wartime. So you don't need to be a scholar on every aspect of immigration law to understand how the judge quickly came to that ruling. That the plane should not take off under the law. That if the plane did take off, turn it around. That didn't happen. U.S. officials acting under Trump's order went forward. And this was over a weekend, and you follow the news, so you've probably heard the term Friday news dump, which refers to the idea that politicians often use late Friday and the weekend to bury things so they might not be big stories by, well, here we are, on Monday, the weekday, where a lot more things happen, the government's open, the news is on, etc., etc. So this weekend, we saw a string of these controversial events. Across Saturday, Trump invoking the act, as I mentioned, and the hearings. Then 2 flights with migrants leaving Texas, and about an hour later, while the other 2 planes are in the air, the judge orders the flights to turn back around, like I told you with that picture of the plane. And then around an hour after that, and this also matters for how suspicious this looks, a 3rd flight then leaves Texas. Timeline courtesy of the Washington Post. So what you see there is a series of acts and events. And remember, for everything that comes down from the president through border officials, through political appointees, there is then the rest of the people inside the government who are U.S. officials who are supposed to follow the rule of law. They all know and have been through this drill before that the rule of law in the United States does not start and end with politicians, heaven forbid, as many people might say. It is ultimately overseen through judges that enforce constitutional limitations. So anyone, any U.S. official aware of those limitations as ruled on by a judge knows the last word is the judge, and you shouldn't be following unlawful orders. Indeed, you took an oath to the Constitution, not to any random president. But maybe we are in a moment where those things are changing. Maybe people are more worried about being ousted and fired legally or semi-legally by Donald Trump and Elon Musk than they are worried about a legal process. Maybe Donald Trump's wanton use of the pardon power, including for people who violently attack police and others, makes those folks far less worried about any potential federal charge that might come later down the road if it's not going to come out of Trump's DOJ, since he issued the order. And even if it did come out of some other independent process, if he's president, he's certainly willing to hand out pardons for anyone politically loyal to him, even when it means violence against police and others. So that's the context. Now I want to show more reporting on this. Veteran reporter Mark Caputo with Axios filed this exclusive on how the Trump White House deliberately ignored this judge's order, that a judge found Trump basically broke the law, that Trump defied the order on that. Axios' headline you see there is clear, and they, with Caputo's reporting, have this key detail, which would suggest the White House knowingly ignored or violated the order because they had an aggressive legal theory that the flights were at that point over international waters, and therefore they say the ruling didn't apply, citing 2 senior officials. Well, that's huge. Because, of course, the U.S. Constitution and U.S. law applies to what the president and U.S. officials do. And just because you run away from the order after, as I said, it was issued, and then get to international waters, does not mean the place you came from and the color of law and the government you're acting under become irrelevant and melt away. And if you're listening to all this, watching on the news, watching it later on YouTube, listening to me on one of those serious audio reports, I promise you from the sound of my voice that if you're thinking, well, I don't know how much I care about these people who are called gang members, we're all going to care a hell of a lot.
2 miles, buddy.
If the United States government under Donald Trump could ever apply a legal theory like this, because its logical conclusion means if they take you off site somewhere else and can do whatever they want, well, then it's open season on just about anyone, because it's not that hard to throw someone on a plane violating a court order and getting them out to international waters. So that Axios reporting is a very significant thing. It is what we call reported evidence. It is from inside the government. It shows how the administration leaned into this clash. It obviously also, to most observers, and certainly to many judges and nonpartisan legal experts, makes the administration look terrible. And that's totally apart from one's policy view on immigration. It's an account of an administration hunting those extreme legal loopholes. Just get the plane in the air. Those loopholes may not be true or exist for the reasons I just reminded everyone, with the apparent goal, according to this reporting, two sources, to defy what was a clear ruling by a U.S. federal judge of a lawful order. And that's not all. I said the plane could take off and land. Well, there was also a third plane that took off later, and then a White House official, disarmed from all those other explanations I just referenced, simply and brazenly claimed it doesn't matter when the flights took off because this was a baseless legal ruling. So this is pretty serious. It's obviously serious for the Constitution, and if the administration is defying that, it's serious for anybody impacted right now, which includes obviously the people deported. Without due process, though, the nation won't really know if they are who the government says they are. And just to go back to the basics, that's why the United States has a constitution that supersedes any single politician, why our founders established those rights and rule of law to begin with. And they warned against exactly potential abuse of these kind of moves, and how if you start denying rights to some, even if some of them might be guilty or might through a more slowed down process still be found eligible for deportation, right? If you have evidence on them about their legal status or criminal activity, etc. But how those moves can then be used against anyone if there's no check on tyrannical governments. That's the whole point of the Bill of Rights. So it's serious. And yet, we do live in strange political times. And we know that cynical bids to grind people down, exhaust everyone, and normalize almost anything are part of this right-wing process and playbook. Even a violent insurrection can be normalized. It might not even be a conscious strategy at this point. It's a kind of cynical political instinct where anything can be defended and then normalized and even eventually online trolled, as the term goes, which is the lens I invite you to consider for this post here, retweeted by Marco Rubio. What you're looking at is a very cynical post from a Trump ally there about what happened, with oopsie written there. So America's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, is reposting this. So he's basically sharing this to everyone. Oopsie, too late. A kind of dunking on the judge to normalize this type of legal defiance. The post is from the Trump ally who runs El Salvador, and you can see, too late, the laughing emoji. LOL. How funny. How unserious. And I mentioned trolling because that's the political term of art of trying to get people to be so.
Jethro. All right, babe. Scoot over. Go over.